have an awesome episode for you this week. It's been 100 episodes. This makes our 100th episode of eLABorate Topics. We started this journey in May 2020, so right in the thick of the pandemic. And we started it to give you a weekly podcast that gives you technical and leadership strategies that you can use both inside and outside of the laboratory. We've been able to highlight some of your favorite laboratorians. We've been able to talk about some of your favorite topics, and it has really been an amazing journey. And I can say that before we started this journey, none of us had met face to face. Can you believe that? So we had a passion to serve. We wanted to increase the visibility of the laboratory in the profession. And we wanted to highlight some of our amazing leaders that are leading in laboratories near and far here in the US as well as globally. So I am excited. I'm Taiwana Wilson, and I am joined by my awesome, amazing sister scientists, Lona Small and Stephanie Whitehead. Ladies, are you ready to kick off our 100th episode?
Yes.
I'm so excited.
Yes. Very exciting. It's hard to believe. 2 years, almost 2 years.
So we
The episodes just kind of have me in awe, just preparing for today.
Yeah.
I know. And as I was thinking back to like some of my favorite highlights, I thought about some of my favorite leadership opportunities and some of the guests that we had. And so I have a few that I'm going to highlight, but I'm going to start off. It was episode 31, and it was how to seek out diverse lab career opportunities. And it featured Cedric LaFleur, and he's actually one of my mentors. So in business, in the clinical laboratory space, he is one of my personal mentors that I have weekly ongoing mentorship with. But what he talked about, and for those of you who have not listened to the episode, please go back. Cedric, he's awesome. He started his career in the laboratory. He served in the military, and he retired from the laboratory at the age of 50. His goal was to retire. He said he needed to have $1 million in the bank. And he said, and his goal was to retire at 50. And so he did that. Now he's in his second act of doing leadership training and coaching and working in our school systems. But what he really talked about was advocacy, and advocacy starting with you. And to be heard in a laboratory, you have to be more expressive. You have to get out and network and get connected with other professionals, which is critical to your visibility. He talked about adding value to other people. That in turn helps you navigate your career, but then talked about not being afraid to seek non-traditional opportunities. So when he retired, he was the sales leader for Abbott Laboratories, and he was over $1 billion operation for Abbott Labs. And he still goes back and talks to them. But what he said that was really key to me in that particular episode is that he said, you have the technical expertise. So as technical leaders, you have it in your chemistry, your transfusion medicine, your regulatory, your compliance. Like you have that strength, right? Mm-hmm. And so he said, now that you really have that technical ability, start focusing on those things in which you are not as strong in. Your sales skills, your management experience, your people skills, how you add value to others. He said, because those are the opportunities and the traits that allow you to rise above the crowd, that allow you to stand out. So don't just get continuing education and professional opportunities in your comfortable scope. Get outside of your scope and get those opportunities. So for me, and I know Lona does a lot of this and Stephanie does a lot of this, getting trainers and expertise in areas that doesn't even really have anything to do with the lab per se, because you can always bring that experience back to the lab. So, ladies, what did you kind of take away from that, of thinking about diverse opportunities and that whole notion? Because sometimes people think, well, we lab, we can't make no money, we don't have to be working till we 75. And for me, Cedric kind of defied that, and he's currently now building his $1 million beach home, living his best life on the other side of the lab. It just proved to me that those limited beliefs that we can only do this or we're limited to this is not really true.
I
You know,
love.
I think it was really amazing to see a person that you could tangibly talk to, hear these things and give these tidbits. I mean, sometimes you think some of these retirement, it's so far off, I'll never get there. $1 million in the bank, you know, that's so far off, especially when you're kind of in the thick of living your life and working and, you know, maybe taking care of children or a family. You think those things are so far off. But to hear a person who actually did it, and then for them to kind of come and reach back and pay that forward and tell others it is possible and here's how to do it. I thought that was really amazing. I've heard you mention his tidbit about, you know, adding to your soft skills more than your technical skills on several occasions. And that's one notion that I really um, took to heart. And I even mention it sometimes. I quote him in some of my talks as well, because I feel like sometimes as laboratorians, we do sell ourselves short of really investing in ourselves and really investing in who we are as professionals. You know, you can go to different conferences and it's very easy for us to get those continuing CEs in our technical skills, but are we investing in the kind of professionals we want to be and the kind of leaders we want to be? And are we pouring into ourselves? And I think it was really inspirational that we've had so many guest hosts, guest speakers over the course of this 100 episodes really resonate that same message. You know, invest in yourself, make yourself more visible, you know, believe in what we do, you know, come out from behind the scenes, be an advocate. And so it's really been a resounding theme over these past 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really love what he's saying because he's speaking my language. I love it a lot because I think that it's great to have our technical skills. And I think everyone should be good in something, should have technical skill in something. But that's the foundation,
Mhm.
that's the basic. How do you stand out? How do you set yourself apart? You're going to need these soft skills. Actually, that was my talk at the last conference. You're going to need these soft skills to really set yourself apart. And I think that for him coming back and supporting the lab is amazing, or even talking on our podcast, because that's where he came from. And that's kind of our passion. Yes, we're using our technical skills, but we're building on that to support others in the lab. So most of my talks going to be on, you know, some of these soft skills or being unique and standing out, and what are some of the things that you can do to stand out. And I really, really admire him. I really admire what he's doing, and the fact that he's coming back to talk to us, to help us to know that yes, your technical ability is great, but what's going to really help you stand out, you're going to need to know all these other things, which are people would refer to as a soft skill. So I think people should go back and listen to that episode.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And Cedric is serving as one of my mentors in the medical laboratory roundtable. So, for all of you out there who's listening, that's members, he will be in September or October. And I'm telling you, if you've never heard him talk, he is outstanding. So, I think about a couple of other episodes, and then I'll let you ladies jump in with your favorite episodes. But I think about, of course, all things leadership is my jam. That's my vibe. And so I think about episodes 19 and 56 with Kiana Cressman. We were very fortunate to have her on a few episodes, but I thought she was awesome. So in episode 19, she talked about she talked about emerging to your highest level of leadership. And then she came back, and Lona and I actually roundtabled with her, and she talked about how to be a masterful communicator to influence at the highest levels. And the big thing that I really took away from those particular episodes is one, create your own definition of success. Sometimes we let society dictate what success is for us. Like you have to go from bench tech to lead tech to supervisor to manager to director. And that's not the path for everybody. And that's okay. She talked about how important it was to invest in a coach such as Lona's programs, where she gets to your core self, feeding your own potential that she talked about, and giving yourself to permission to be confident, because as lab people, we like to be reserved and we like to do a good job and hope somebody notices our efforts. Let's face it, everybody's busy.
Mhm.
Everybody doesn't always notice every single milestone that we do. So I thought that was like critical, that giving yourself permission to be confident. Like it's not about bragging or anything like that, but it is about being confident and knowing your own self-worth. She
Mhm.
talked about active listening and how that sets influencers apart from everybody else. So if you're thinking about how can you get that slight edge,
Mhm.
being an active listener, making sure you give helpful nuggets, as I like to say, helpful tidbits to other people and adding value to them, paying attention to people's body language when something seems to be off. You know with your team when somebody is going through something because they're off, they're just not quite there. So I thought that Kiana gave some great tidbits in those particular two episodes. And then before I let you ladies jump in and kind of talk about what you got from Kiana's, we also had Dr. Cami Rapp, who circled back in episode 4 that
Mhm.
talked about the power of your social capital. So as Kiana was talking about influence and being a master communicator, then it made me think Dr. Cami Rapp talked about harnessing the power of your relationships to drive your projects, your goals, you being able to broaden your network. So I felt like those three was like a triple threat for you on the leadership space. So episode 4, 19, and 56, I think you should go back and really check those out. Ladies, did you have any thoughts about any of those particular episodes?
Dr. Cami Rapp, she's a very good friend of mine, and I really enjoyed that episode where I was able to just really have a phenomenal talk with her about the social capital aspect and the social capital theory. And I think that's actually something she studied deeply as she was in her journey to get her doctorate at Yale. And what was so interesting is I had never thought about relationships before as being capital, kind of like your money or your car or your house, something equitable that you could cash in on. And when she kind of talked about this new and emerging term, and the power of really looking at your relationships and your interactions as capital, as something that you could hold like in your social or your relationship bank, and when times come you can cash in on those things. It really helped me transform, the way I thought about my relationships, particularly in my professional life and at work, but also professionally as it turns into networking, because sometimes you go to conferences, you take the business cards, you connect with people on social media, and you really never take that extra mile to truly connect and interface with that person. But when you think about it, you could be missing out on your next job, on your next mentor, on the person who's going to help you get to another level. If you approach everything like somebody knows something that you don't, when you meet people, you should always be trying to engage, not just what you can get from them, but what also what you can bestow onto other people. And so I thought that was um, extremely powerful. And the bit about being confident, self-awareness is something you have to sometimes grow into. You have to kind of grow into your confidence as you become older and more tenured, and you go through more experiences in life. It helps you gain more confidence about yourself. But I think that those two, like you said, were really powerful episodes. I know myself, I gained a lot from listening to those ladies.
Yeah, myself, I really gained a lot. After Kiana's episode, I contacted her immediately. After I listened to the first episode, because I was so impressed with her, because I kind of saw myself in her, because I was struggling at that time where I wanted to do so much more in the lab in terms of growth, and because I love what I did in the lab, but then I was being tugged into helping others when it comes to coaching. And when I listen to her and the things that she has done, and she has grown herself professionally, and at the same time able to grow her business as a passion, I was like, that's the lady I need to
Hmm.
talk to. And
Hmm.
I suppose it blends into that whole networking piece of connecting with people, and talking to people and seeing their journey. And I do that a lot even with my coaching clients. Like, they have to reach out to people who are in the role that they're aspiring to get into. That's part of the exercise that they do. And like Stephanie says, not just reaching out to see what you can get, but what can they offer? How can they build relationships? And it's not just like, when I reach out, I'm going to ask you to hire me, because most of the people that they're reaching out to are not even people who can hire them, but
Hmm.
people that they can learn from and they can contribute to and build. And so that whole relationship thing is so important. And I'm really proud of eLABorate Topics podcast to be bringing on guests who can help us as medical lab professionals, who many times we only think about the academic achievement or our technical achievement, but never thought about how all of this can be a major edge. And just for me, coaching people and exposing that to them is like mind blowing. Like, wow, this makes such a big difference in my growth, or even getting opportunities that they never thought they could get. So I think those were really great. And having that other conversation with Kiana again, that round table was awesome.
Hmm.
So those were a really great episode for people to go back and listen to.
I totally agree, Lona. One of the things that I thought about as you were talking was one of our more recent episodes from season 2, when we talked about work friends with a frequent guest speaker, Kristen Talamonte. And one of the things she said was, finding work friends can help you find the joy in what you do. Don't just go to work, but just try to find joy in what you do. And as we talk about this, you can not only just find joy in what you do at work, but joy in your profession. And so, particularly, my friendship with you two ladies has helped, like you said, reignite that spark in what we do, and really give you motive, purpose, drive to continue to do more outside of just your 8 to 5, but do more in terms of really pouring back and mentoring into others. So, I'm hoping that some of these episodes really drive others for that same type of purpose and passion.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, and before you share your favorite episodes, Lona, thinking about Kiana and thinking about, a lot of times scientists, lab professionals say, well, what can I do? There are many ways that you can leverage your platform. And Kiana has Emerge Woman magazine. And I tell you, her magazine is phenomenal.
Hmm.
She has a global magazine, and it's for uplifting and empowering women. And I first got connected to Kiana from Tiffany Channer,
Hmm.
our fellow laboratorian and sister scientist.
Hmm.
But she introduced me to Kiana, and Kiana actually wrote a spread, an article, and it featured Tiffany, Dana Baker, and myself, and it was inside of a area that was talking about STEM careers, and it was focused on medical laboratory. And so Kiana is a laboratory professional by background. She's huge in the transfusion medical space, transfusion medicine space. But I'm saying that to say that she utilized her passion for empowering women and young girls in her magazine to highlight the profession. And
Mhm.
so there's more than one way to highlight the profession. If you listen to the episode with Tiffany Lab Lady Gill, she
Mhm.
uses YouTube to advocate
Mhm.
for the profession. And there's just so many other ways. So sometimes people say, well, what can I do? What are you good at? What are
Yeah.
you passionate about? And then you can intertwine the two or three or whatever it might be. So Lona, I know you have some technical episodes that were like your favorites. I'm ready to jump in.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, I was asked to find some technical episodes that were my favorite, and I found we didn't have a lot of technical episodes, but the ones that we had were really great. And as I said, we're not saying that you should not have great technical skills, because we all really have good technical skills, whatever we do, but there's always that added piece that eLABorate Topics podcast stand out above others to add that those soft skills and all the other things that we need in order to excel in the lab and outside the lab. So I chose a few technical episodes, and the first one that I chose was episode 37, Forensic Pathology. I Tell the Story My Patients Can Tell, by Dr. Nicole Jackson. And I know forensic pathology has become kind of a sexy topic because of the TV show CSI. And not only that, I think it's really intriguing, because just thinking of, we have a symposium at Johns Hopkins, and whenever the topic of either autopsy comes up, there's standing room, because people are really intrigued. Maybe a lot of people may not do it, but you want to know what they do. And so I think Taiwana interviewed Dr. Jackson, and I know that that was also one of Taiwana's favorite episode. But I got the opportunity to talk about technical, so I get to talk about her. So you know, Taiwana, I think one of the great thing about Dr. Jackson is that she's an African American woman who is a doctor, and a great role model for African American girls looking into science. And so with the interview, she was able to kind of dispel some of the things that they talk about on TV when it comes to pathology or forensic pathology. She spoke about the whole process, and sometimes it can be a long process, but she kind of brought some reality to the whole discipline. And also, she spoke a little bit about her journey, and her journey is kind of similar to a lot of us, because when she went to med school, her goal was to specialize in surgery. And somehow she got introduced to pathology, and she got into the field of pathology and became a medical examiner. So I found that very impressive for a young African American woman. And so she spoke some more about some of the challenges during COVID, because eLABorate topic started during COVID. And she spoke about some of the challenges, how she communicated with families during that time. And another thing that was impressive to me was her desire to mentor. So she is involved in mentoring other people who are looking in the profession. And one thing that stood out to me that she said was that she loved to help people to bring out their unique strengths. That was not exactly the word that she used, but her mentorship is to help people to stand out using their specific calling. And I can relate so much to that because that's what I do in my coaching. And she thought it was important to help people to figure out their specific calling and mentor them. So although she's a medical examiner, she's a pathologist, she's a forensic pathologist, she's taken the time to mentor other young ladies. And I thought that was a great episode. And I think that, you should go back and listen. And if you know anyone who is thinking of forensic pathology, help get them on to eLABorate Topics to listen to this episode, because I get a lot of questions about forensic pathology, and I can't direct them because I'm in the lab. So people assume that I know. And at least 2 young ladies over the past 3 years has come to me. So go back and listen to that episode. So, ladies, what was your takeaway from this?
Well, I'm sure Tawana has a lot to say because that was her episode that she interviewed her. But I'm glad you mentioned that. Like us, she's an African American woman in STEM. And what intrigued me about that episode is, although you see a handful of African American, especially females, in laboratory science, I have not personally seen many African American women as pathologists. And so it was very intriguing for me and very inspiring for me to just be able to be connected to her and understand what her journey was and just have that connection, like I said, to somebody else in that position. Again, the forensic field, especially to scientists, is very sexy. We all watch CSI, all the 48 hours. I mean, once you start an episode of 48 hours, you can't stop. If you're walking out the door and you hear that dun, dun, all of it, then you have to sit down and watch the whole episode because it is very intriguing. During lab week every year, our pathologist does what he calls a gross lunch. And it's a lunch and learn where he goes over different autopsy cases. And like you said, there's standing room only because people are so intrigued by this field of pathology. So again, it was very interesting to hear this episode, and very enlightening as well.
So, yeah, I have a lot of things to say about this particular episode. In interviewing Dr. Nicole Jackson. One, I am a fan, let me tell you. So early in my career, after I decided I wasn't going to dental school and I was going to stay in this lab thing, I thought, wow, maybe I could be a forensic pathologist. I had never seen one before. I didn't know exactly what that meant. And so, needless to say, that idea or that goal of being a forensic pathologist went out the window because I hadn't seen anybody that looked like me that was in that role. And so I got connected with Dr. Jackson on Twitter. And I was like, who is this lady? And to find that she's a forensic board trained pathologist, I was like, wow, I've been in the industry for nearly 20 years and I had never seen an African American forensic pathologist. And I was fortunate enough to actually meet Dr. Jackson in person at the ASCP 2020 annual meeting. So, I mean, it was fun. It was phenomenal. It's just to be able to meet her because it was like, you are the dream. Like you are what my dream was. I just never had met anybody that was in that profession that looked like me. So representation matters because maybe if I'd have saw Dr. Jackson 20 years ago or 10 years ago, then maybe I would have been able to continue to think it was possible, think it was a reality. But if you've ever heard her story or heard her talk, and she gave a little bit about it on the episode, but she talked about, getting into medical school and fellowship. And she said it was either where she had fellowship or where she went to medical school, there has been very few African Americans that have went and graduated since she went through
Mhm.
her training, and that was, I don't know, at least 10 or 15 years ago. But just kudos to Dr. Jackson. She's using her platform. I see her out speaking. She was an ASCP 40 under 40, so she's doing big things. She's also one of the founding board members of the Society of Black Pathologists. So if you ever get a chance to hear her talk and hear her talk about her journey, that even though she is in that role of being a medical examiner and being a forensic pathologist, there's been very few that has come behind her. And you're probably thinking, well, why is that so important? Well, when you have somebody that looks like you and familiar with you, that's working in your medical examiner's office, and as we know that is a very specialized industry, you want a person that can be able to tell your story as well, that's familiar with your makeup, your demographics, those things that affect you as well. So yeah, that I love Dr. Jackson. Hey, Dr. Nicole Jackson. But yeah, it was definitely, it was for me, it was a dream come true actually getting to meet her in person.
Awesome, awesome. And I know that in the regular pathology, we have a group of Black pathologists at Hopkins that's really pushing it. They're going to medical school, they're recruiting. You have a group that's really trying to get that representation, but that's a specialty forensic pathology. So the other episodes, I'm going to see how I can group them. So I looked at the regulatory. We had episode 14, surviving regulatory inspection. We had episode 48, preparing for modified cap inspection, and episode 23, talk with international QA QC coordinator. So I think the one that we did, episode 14, surviving regulatory inspections, was so thoroughly done, so well done, that I think that anyone who has either never been introduced to inspection, who's thinking of going to inspection, please go listen to episode 14, because we did such a great job. Starting out with, it was a round table, starting out with Stephanie kind of defined what an inspection was. She went into a lot of detail with the different regulatory bodies. Taiwana spoke about how to get ready, the details of the personal list, the activity menu with equipment, proficiency testing, the whole thing about the testing complexity, procedure manual, QA plan, down to all of that detail. We went through when it comes to getting ready. We spoke about that readiness culture, always being ready. I spoke about that. I spoke about self-inspection, how to get involved with your self-inspection, how to get everyone involved, audits that you can do on a regular basis, tracers that you can do, some of the fun stuff that you can get your team to do, like scavenger hunt, know where to find procedures, know where to find safety procedure, making sure people are wearing PPE, things that you do as part of your routine. Some of those are like weekly audits when it comes to PPE and reagent. Training of inspectors who are actually lab people, are trained to be inspectors, and reviewing competency files. Some of those are readiness culture. We talk about how to actually conduct the inspection. Stephanie spoke about some of the tools that are used. I spoke about the whole training that you can do to be an inspector, and Taiwana spoke about the benefit. So I think this was so well done. It was so thorough that anyone who wants to learn about inspection, this would be the first place to start before you even go and do your cap inspection. What do you guys think?
I thought that this episode was so key for one large reason that you have to incorporate into any conversation nowadays, which is COVID. you know, During COVID, which is really the reason why I initially reached out to Taiwana, hoping to be a guest on her show, and then we started our own podcast.
Yes.
But during COVID, I think things were changing so rapidly. You know, we're throwing together lab developed tests, you know, just regulatory things were changing. People had so many safety and quality questions in the laboratory during that time. And as we were learning this information, there just wasn't an immediate way to broadly distribute it to all of the other laboratorians that you know have the same questions. And so I thought that this episode was so timely because this came during a time where virtual inspections had really just started. And so you had some laboratorians who had never even done an in-person inspection, trying to prepare for a virtual inspection, trying to conduct a virtual inspection. And so it was so novice that I think that all of these tips really help people kind of just get the fundamentals back and really just understand stepwise how to prepare, conduct, and go through and be successful with inspections. And then also, we know, and this is some of our favorite episodes too, but you can't not talk about this and talk about laboratorians, the workforce shortage. So we lost so many people over the past 2 years in our field, and so much of that knowledge, you know, left when those people either retired or decided to leave the profession. And so it left, you know, individuals who may not have had as much inspection or regulatory experience in the laboratory trying to figure things out. And I think, like we said, again, paying it forward, us coming up with this roundtable and giving all of these nuggets from all of our three individual aspects and vantage points was really helpful, especially during this time.
Right. And I think Stephanie's referring to episode 48. So we'll kind of just wrap them both together. So episode 14 was just giving the basic foundation for everyone to know about an inspection. And episode 48 was so timely. We talked about how to adjust during COVID to the inspection, the hybrid and the virtual, and just exchanging notes from different experiences. And I think for people who haven't gone through an inspection yet since COVID, should go to episode 48, because especially Stephanie at the time was really at the cusp of her inspection. So she had basically done everything that was needed to do for that hybrid inspection. And so it was great for me and for Taiwan and everyone else, even to listen to Stephanie's experience. But just listening to that, we realized that we had more in common than differences in terms of the preparation that we were, you know, the whole electronics, some of the challenges that we were having. So I think episode 48, listen to that if you haven't done your inspection since COVID, because I just did mine. And just like Stephanie said, it was a year after the window was open. And basically, you know, they set the date. So you know when they were coming in. I don't know in the next few months if things will change, but if you're expecting yours anytime soon, go and listen to episode 48. And for the sake of time, I'm going to jump to the last one and then give Stephanie a chance to talk about her favorite. The last one that I'm going to talk about is international QA/QC coordinators. So if you're interested, if you're a QA and if you're in QC and you're interested in inspecting abroad, the episode 23 about talk with international QA/QC coordinator was very great. Heidi Haynes and Peggy Coulter working from PSMILE, which is Patient Safety Monitoring and International Labs, where they actually go into labs and help them to set up to make sure that they're meeting certain standards and qualities, because these labs are testing patients with clinical trials and they want to make sure that the patients are safe. And so they volunteer to be part of PSMILE. It's I think it's funded by NIH, and there's so much great experience just working abroad in different labs. And that to me, I love, because I know many years ago, I wanted to go on a program with ASCP. And at the time I couldn't because my kids were in school and the timing wasn't right. But for people who want to go to help in underdeveloped countries and help them with their labs, situations like these would be great. So listen to this episode 23. And then Carlo Ledesma, I had him on talking about the DCLS program. And that is a great episode for people who are aspiring to grow in their profession. Go and listen to episode 12. Listen to Carlo's journey, all the things that he has done, and his love for learning and his love for giving back. Because while he's in this doctoral program, he's still giving back as a he's sharing the program for MLT and phlebotomy. So those were the technical episode that I really enjoyed. And so, these are just some bits about them. So go back and listen to those episodes. I realize that we have so many great episodes just reviewing this. And so please go back and listen to some of these episodes.
So I think it's my turn. I think I'm going to share a couple of episodes that I have really enjoyed over these past 2 seasons. And for me, if you've listened to my story, I talk about my early journey as a leader in the laboratory, firing people and crying and, all of those stories that really defined me and helped me along in my early days. But with the recent talk over so many platforms about the national workforce shortage in our laboratory community, I really loved episode 50, which was hiring on all cylinders. And it was really a follow-up to episode 15, emerging solutions for the clinical laboratory workforce. And both of those episodes featured Dana Baker Powell, but episode 15 actually also featured James. He goes by Jim Payne. And in those episodes, we really just talked about, from our vantage point, solutions to help with the national workforce shortage, particularly with starting early, really promoting STEM and laboratory professions and a career in the laboratory medicine industry from a very early age, middle school even, and going into high school, and really supporting those students as they go through their student journey and until they get into the clinical laboratory science field. And really, as we continue to talk about all of these episodes, one of the resounding themes, like I said before, was, we're not doing anything special. We're not anybody in particular, but we're just people who felt like we could give more to our profession. And that's what so many of these guests are also doing. And I really think that that's going to be the crux of what helps us with this laboratory workforce shortage. I know ASCP has a committee that they've instituted now that Tawana sits on and she supports, but really it's going to take all of us locally coming together and sharing, what are you doing in your lab? This is what I've done in my lab and it's working, to really help each other. So what are you guys' thoughts on the national workforce shortage and some of the solutions that we've come up with in these 2 episodes?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm excited about the steering committee through ASCP. There was a huge survey that was done, a huge research project that was done, and there's tons of data around it. I mean, the report is probably close to 100 pages. And so Jim Payne and I are on that committee, and I think ASCP and there's other organizations that's doing work around this, but ASCP has gathered a group of diverse professionals. So lab professionals, people that are pathologists, Jim Payne and his innovative program and how he's training high school students. So I thought that episode with him and Dana was valuable because they're both educators, and that's a start. So it's like they're educators, they're working with our students, but us in the workforce, we too need to collaborate with the programs. We need to collaborate with our educators so that we are being good partners, whether that's helping with our clinical training sites, whether that's giving a high school student exposure or a walk in my shoes for a day type of opportunity. I think it's going to take a community, a village, and some out of the box strategies to move beyond the current workforce shortage that we see.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea that we should be looking at so many different things other than doing the same thing we have always done. And LabOpex Live, when I had LabOpex Live, I did not expect. I know I've done a survey and I know that workforce shortages have been, but almost all of season one, all of the guests, they were talking about workforce shortage. And that wasn't planned. And so we realized that just talking and getting perspective, I realized that it's not a one shot fit all. You're not going to have one solution. And I've just listened to all these different perspectives, and I realized that we should take all these perspectives and put that together for solution. Because some people are talking about, like, I know Angela did a great, Angela Robinson talking about attract, recruit and retain, and some people only talk about one aspect. And then Carla Ledesma talk about collaborating with the practitioners when it comes to the training programs, because they can't do it by themselves. So you have these professionals in the training programs trying to recruit people, and we're not working together. So there's so many prongs to it. And so, Taiwan, I'm glad you're on the committee, and I'm hoping you can get ideas from different people when it comes to solution, because we can't continue to do what we have always done. So I think this is a very, very important topic that everybody's talking about.
And for me, what's so important is there's sometimes a gap in the strategy when you focus so much on recruitment, but you don't mention anything about retention. And so I've said it so many times, you couldn't pay me to work in toxic work environment. And especially now, it is really a candidate's market. It is, people can go anywhere, laboratory professionals, and really any ancillary professional, PT, radiology, pharmacy, it's a candidate's market. People are giving really crazy salaries, sign-on bonuses, and other incentives to get skilled ancillary workers in their industry and in their hospitals to help their patients. And so when you have an environment like that where people can really go anywhere they want to and work, you've got to hold on to them with a great culture, a transparent environment, and really instilling trust and relationship building and loyalty. And it doesn't have to necessarily be your manager and supervisor's job to do that. And I really would oppose holding your manager and supervisor and lead techs to responsible for the entire culture of the laboratory. It's everybody's responsibility to do that. When we're bringing on new technologists, be prepared for when they come on, help them find their locker. If you see them sitting by themselves at break, smile and be warm. And that's why I love the episode 67, Leading When Your Boss Can't, and 72, Leading Without a Title. Because in both of those episodes, we really talked about empowering everybody from the front line, from your receiving clerk to your phlebotomist to your night shift tech, to be responsible for pointing out the things that need to be improved, for sticking up for the laboratory, for training each other, for being responsible for a positive culture and a positive environment. And especially in these times right now, you may have people who have just moved into interim positions or permanent positions that weren't necessarily ready, but you had to fill the position, and they may not be equipped with these tasks. And if you know that that's something that you don't have to wait on your boss to do it. You can step up and start doing some of these things. And so, what are your ladies' thoughts on those two episodes?
No, I think you made a good point. And, my brief comments is just that leadership starts with self. And so that's the very first place to start. And you're right that a lot of times our leaders, our supervisors, and managers are learning in the job. They've not been equipped or prepared to assume these responsibilities, but yet they're open. And so it's no fault of their own, it's utilizing the strengths of the team. And so as our teams are thinking, well, how can I stand out? How can I gain some leadership experience? I talk about this many times, is that if you have a boss, you should be playing up to their strengths. You should want them to succeed. So if they succeed, you succeed. And so if it was me being a frontline person, I would do everything that I could to lead where I was.
Mhm.
And then that way, those good deeds wouldn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, I love that, especially about teams. And I did so many episodes about challenging your team and, actually building on the strength of your team. But then that's really for leaders and for the team. Just listening to these episodes, they realize that there's just so much that they can do without a role. And it really will empower them to feel as if they contribute. So, go back and listen. Guys, go back and listen to as many episodes as possible, because these are gold. For me, just a lot of times we get so busy in doing, and we are also at fault too, because I think that we're so busy creating all this content because we have so much to give that sometimes we ourselves don't take that time to absorb. And I took some time to go back and listen to some of these episodes, and they're just so valuable. So I really am encouraging you guys to go back and listen to these episodes. There's a lot for team members, there are a lot for leadership, there's a lot for everyone at different levels. So the one on teams, please go back and listen to it, because you can lead without a title.
You know what, ladies? So, just in closing, I personally have been so proud of the three of us and what we've been able to accomplish over these past 2 years, over these past 100 episodes. It's not just a centennial for ASCP, it's a centennial for the eLABorate Topics podcast. And just for myself, I want to thank our listeners. I mean, we've had so many positive comments and so much positive feedback, and we've seen so much growth. I know I've seen so much growth within myself, even going back and listening to the initial podcast until now, and just the way I approach, sitting down with an interviewer, and just what I plan on how I gain. And so I want to thank you ladies for an amazing journey. I want to thank our listeners for an amazing journey. I want to thank Taiwana for being, the pioneer of all of this stuff and showing that it was possible with her previous podcast, because she really had this foundation already laid out for us. We just had to jump on to her train because it was already going forward. But any closing thoughts for our listeners after 100 episodes in?
No, I would just say I ditto your sentiments. It's really been a blessing and an honor to be on this journey with you all. And I can go back to that very first episode of In the Lab. So go back to that episode, and we were like, is this the right decision? Should we be doing this? Are we qualified? And I'm like, yeah, we are qualified, and we are the people to do this podcast at this time. So you all have become more than, just co-hosts. You have become truly my friends, and my sister scientists, and I love you both. And so I know Lona probably has a few things, but Stephanie, I want to make sure that you give a notable mention to our most popular podcast. And I want to give a notable mention to one of our loyal, dedicated friends, and I'll say honorary members of eLABorate Topics podcast, Aaron Odegaard. We absolutely love because you right here with us.
Yeah.
Aaron is in Florida, and he is always talking about this podcast. And so we thank you for being a friend and honorary member of the eLABorate Topics podcast.
Yes, and just like Taiwan was saying, Blessing Wamba, she was one of our most listened to episodes. I think her episode even helped us hit or reach over that international mark, because so many of her friends and family from back home listened to that episode. And so we want to definitely give her honorable mention too. And Aaron, we love you. I mean, supporting us even down to our personal life. He bought Girl Scout cookies from my girls. He has just always been a supporter of each one of us individually, as well as this podcast collectively.
Thank you all. Thank you all, the listeners, for supporting us. I think for me, when I went into this, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think this far. You know, I always wanted to do podcasts because I wanted to encourage leaders. But, you know, we got together and we're like, we are going to collaborate. But I never thought that we would have gotten this far. And so thank you, ladies, especially for even encouraging me, because there are times when I thought that this was just a lot that I was doing. I was doing so many other things, and just knowing that this really make a difference to the medical lab, to me, it's everything. Because for me, my goal is to empower and to build. And the fact that this is making such a difference and we have so much variety of content, I'm really, really happy. And thank you so much, ladies. And thank you, listeners, for supporting us. And I'm so proud to be part of eLABorate Topics podcast.
Well, thank all of you for tuning in to our 100th celebratory episode, celebrating eLABorate Topics, celebrating you all as listeners to our journey, and really celebrating each other for venturing out and being able to produce something so awesome and tremendous for our laboratory profession. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you join our eLABorate Topics group on LinkedIn. Sorry. So you can continue to be a part of our conversation. Make sure you follow all of us on our social media so you can get all of the new updates about the shows. If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you would just like to understand a little bit more on the topic, we're always here to help mentor and teach anybody. Until then, until another episode, we will see you next time.